starting to dawn on us the challenges that we're going through at the moment, and then definitely afterwards as well, after the lockdown. So we're starting with something quite different, to be quite honest. We're facing disruption on steroids. And as Sonja Blignaut has said in the new book that we've just published, she said, we're moving from a state of chaos to a state of confusion and backwards the whole time. We're out of the state of complexity. So are we going to, many people are asking these questions, how are we going to cope? We know that this type of uncertainty leads to anxiety, to stress, feelings of being overwhelmed, and at times we even feel quite incompetent. But I suppose this is the new reality. And the challenge for the HR fraternity has never been bigger. On the 24th of March, in the 24th of March edition of The Economist, they make this point in a beautiful article. They said, the HR profession is now moving to the center of the organization. It's not the CFO anymore, or the CIO, it's the HR profession. The chief HR officer needs to guide the board, the exco, on how to navigate through this new normal. It's going to take a long time before we see everything settled down. So we're entering a new world of work, new ways of doing business, some industries virtually being destroyed, like the hospitality, tourism industry. Others are going to, the sanitation, health and safety will blossom probably. So none of us have the recipe how to move forward. And as I always quote Robert Quinn, who talked about deep change, and he said, in a state of deep change, in a state of deep change, the best we can do is we build the bridge as we walk on it. And that's where we are at this moment in time. So we need, as a fraternity and as a discipline and as a profession, we need to work together through this period of time. We need to share success. We need to share failures, to be quite honest, and exchange ideas. So we build new theories. We have to collaborate. We have to collaborate on steroids, so to speak. So with that in mind, and with our experience with the L&D community that we started about 18 months ago, and we have over 300 members there, we decided to establish two new communities. One for the HR director, the chief HR officer, the very senior people in the HR fraternity, and then the HR general community. So if I can just share you, Buzi and Zia will be in touch with you, and Debbie afterwards, about more details about these communities. But if I can share you in broad terms what it's all about, it's membership based. It will have its own website. It's already there, the websites, and it's populated with a lot of content, relevant content around the COVID-19 and the impact on businesses. So for the HR directors, it will be at a strategic level. It's about influence. It's about broad trends. It's about strategies. For instance, which skills do we need for the immediate future? What's this mental health support we're going to give our people in this changing environment? Salary policy. I mean, we are now dealing with a very distressed economy, in certain industries, very depressed economy. So what are the salary and wage and benefit strategies? The big thing for the next 2 years at least will be health and safety and sanitation. So what are the strategies around that? That's the type of things we will discuss and handle there. And then on the HR general community, for the more people reporting to the HR directors, there we're dealing with the actual problems. How do you implement these strategies? What are the tools and techniques we would require? What's working, what doesn't work? And we and we will collaborate again on sharing information on that. On the website, there is this facility where, on that platform, there is this facility where we can exchange ideas with each other. So from our side, from the KR team side, we deeply understand the HR profession and the discipline around it, the disciplines around it, the content, the knowledge, the theories. And that's where we will come in curating content. I mean, I'm at the moment, and I'm sure all of you at least, is being inundated, overwhelmed with a plethora of content every single second. Some of it extraordinarily good, some of it absolutely rubbish. So that's where our strength comes in, to curate what is at this moment in time relevant, and we will post it and distribute and disseminate that to the members. Have high-level online webinars like we have at the moment that will be only for the HR community. And in this whole, let's call it journey that we're entering on, we will have to participate and be very involved, share with each other, and those sort of, that is available on the platform and in the communication that we will start with you. So this morning's session is an example of what we plan for and going to roll out for the next couple of weeks and months to come. We have, I'm not sure, is Jeanett in already, Bussi?
No, she's not yet. Apparently Bussi's trying to help her. So I think we can just start with others.
No, so Mark, if it's okay with you, I'm going to move right in with you, and then you can share with us. Mark Bussin is the chairman of 21st Century, one of the biggest remuneration and benefits consultancy in the Southern Hemisphere, but with offices around the world. Mark and Chris Blair started the company here in the early 90s. They've really developed it to extraordinary business. And most of you know Mark. He's a prolific author. He's written many books for us, published various articles in peer-reviewed journals. He has a PhD from University of Johannesburg. He lectures at various universities. He serves on many different boards and advisory committees. And we are really very privileged to have Mark with us. And Mark, if you can just tell us, give us a couple of ideas around the what we can expect now. What are the priorities around the remuneration and so on? Just incidentally, Mark's also a past president of SARA, South African Rewards Association. Mark, over to you.
No, thank you, Wilhelm, and congratulations on a wonderful idea to connect the community. And greetings to the community. There are so many familiar faces and names. It's wonderful to see you. Remuneration touches everybody's pocket, and everybody is hurting. There is no one that has not been touched. Even if you've been touched, some have been touched positively, like Netflix, and others have been touched really badly, like the rest of us, and especially the restaurants, airlines, and hospitality industry. So I like the place where you started, Wilhelm. It leads in really well. Before we talk about remuneration, this is about empathy. It's first and foremost a human capital crisis. So before we even talk Rem, the human capital crisis is just unbelievable. The retrenchments that have followed, the job loss that have followed and will follow, not just here, but in the United States and all over the world, it's unprecedented. We haven't seen anything like this. So this is definitely business unusual. After we've done the empathy bit, then we need to communicate very thoroughly and consult very thoroughly. Our Section 189 in the Labour Relations Act does a very good job of talking you through how to consult. And the trends globally, so our South African trends match the global trends identically. Their pay cuts of between 25 and 50%. Most have stopped payments to the retirement funds other than the risk portion. Most have done pay freezes. There will be no bonuses. And the big issue is long-term incentives. Very few of them are going to vest. And the approaches to the short-term incentives are mass recalibration after COVID-19, and also rescaling and readjusting the LTIs post COVID-19. So we probably won't make up any of this. This money's gone forever. So the strategies that organizations are implementing are a range of just a pure pay cut, as I mentioned, to some fairly novel ideas, like everyone contributes 25% of their salary into a solidarity fund for their own organization. So if anyone is in distress in their own organization, you can draw on that fund. Money that's not paid out at the end of COVID-19, when things normalize, will be redistributed back to employees. And most people have gone for that. We've seen a lot of innovation in big business where they talk about 80, 90, 100, 80% of your salary, 90% of your time, and 100% of your benefits. So we're seeing a lot of innovation coming through on that front. Internationally, the UK has suspended all pay data reporting, and it won't enforce the court orders or the fines. So a massive positive, bold leap to try and give organizations a little bit of reprieve there. The US has adopted what's called proportional approach. So everything is going to be prorated according to the new set of financials, the new company performance, including your remuneration, including your STI, your short-term incentive or bonus, and including your long-term incentive. In terms of long-term incentives, globally, we've reached consensus that we'll not support goal adjustments. We are definitely still opposed to repricing of share options and stock options. And this has all led to a whole lot of other HR interventions, ranging from early retirement, delaying hires, new hires, renegotiating supply contracts, working remotely, restructuring organizations, temporary layoffs, permanent layoffs. And the biggest challenge for the HR community right now, in my view, is predicting the future workforce and what its needs are in response to the economic changes. There are 4 guiding principles I'd like to end off with. And the first one is purpose. The guiding principle of purpose: most organizations exist for a reason. And a lot of organizations are re-looking at their purpose. Do we still operate like we used to operate? The second one is alignment, where we, as a principle, we are sharing the pain and the gain with the shareholder. Now, that's quite interesting. And normally we only share in the upside, but now executives are sharing in the downside. So that's a massive shift in approach and principles. The third principle is accountability. We hold executives accountable via the short-term incentive and long-term incentive goals and objectives. We reward them for that. With none of it vesting and none of it happening, we have to work extra hard at the accountability side of things. How do we still keep them accountable? And the fourth one is engagement, where incentives need to be adapted to the new economic realities. So you shouldn't change targets. We've been taught right from year dot, halfway through the year, and those targets won't get changed. But at the end of this and the end of the financial reporting, there will be mass realignment of targets, objectives, bonuses, purpose. And my final thought, I guess not a principle, but just a closing thought, would be, should executive compensation be linked to management's action to mitigate the spread of COVID and ensuring employee well-being? So it's basically fast-tracking what's known now as ESG, the environment, social and governance side of things. That is starting to feature as metrics in STIs and LTIs. But this COVID-19 catastrophe it might fast-track that. On a lighter note, and perhaps just a joke, the global trend over the past year has been pay equity, paying men and women the same, a massive challenge. Well, COVID, I read reliable statistics, attacks men and women equally, so we can learn from it too. That's it in a nutshell, Wilhelm. I'll gladly take any questions in the chat box. and gladly take any questions from yourself as the facilitator.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. I think we're, it's a mouthful, and it's clear that we're heading into difficult times when it comes to remuneration, and it cuts across everybody. It's not only at the bottom of the ladder, as so many times in the tough economic times, but this time it's hitting hard at the top as well. For all the participants, we have a chat room, and you can pose your questions in the chat room. I would like to handle all the questions right at the end, after all three of the panelists and speakers have participated and made their presentation. So I believe Jeanett is with us now. Good morning, Jeanett.
Good morning, Velelem. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. Are you well?
I'm well, thank you. And how are you? And good morning to our audience.
No, I think we're all, hopefully all are healthy and safe. I think the stress levels range, there's quite a, probably a normal curve when it comes to the stress levels as well of the people. And that's why we're actually very glad that you're here with us. I'm going to introduce you, Jeanett, right away. She is on the board of directors for Sanlam Group. She was appointed on the board and as the top HR person in 2019. Jeanett holds an MBA degree, and she's done various executive development programs at Harvard and INSEAD. For example, she was previously involved with many blue chip organizations like SAP, Hewlett Packard, Nedbank, and Anglo Gold Ashanti, to mention a few. She's a seasoned HR professional, and she's going to talk to us about how do you as the Chief HR Officer cope and during this period of time, and the role of the HR department during this time. What are the HR strategies and so on? And I can just share with you that Jeanett had to handle one of the first deaths due to COVID-19 very early on. I think it was the first or second person that died, a young woman in Cape Town, and she had to handle it with one of her employees. So in that respect, accept our sympathy also, Jeanett, and over to you.
Thank you, Velelem. I mean, if one looks at COVID-19 and the humanitarian crisis, and that is has caused the impact on not just the economy, but on the lives of people globally, I'm sure everyone will agree with me that as leaders and also as professionals, we are learning on a day-to-day basis. This is not the usual crisis management that you can just retrieve your business continuity plan or crisis communication plan and get on with it. And it's a very challenging environment where, for instance, if I look at the role of the HR director, I really had to play a very important role of pulling everyone together, but firstly doing an analysis to get to understand what is it that we are dealing with. But this is a very challenging one because it's like a moving target and everything changes almost on a daily basis. But it's something that you can only deal with as a team. It's not one individual only that can really make a huge impact. But when we looked at the impact of this global pandemic, it was very clear that it should be people first. And that is not because I'm in HR. If we look at our business, it's a people business. And really any other business, even if it's a technology business, there's people behind it. But this is a global pandemic that actually it touches everybody. Mark mentioned, I mean, it knows no gender, it knows no status, it knows no financial capability of a company. And one of the things that I had to do was to trigger the crisis management approach when I realized that this is going to have a huge impact. If you have maybe 25 or less people you can work with in a business, that has a huge impact, and it requires the leaders to firstly lead from the front. And as the HR head, I needed to firstly, on the one hand, we need to respond quickly, but help the leaders to not rush too quickly to execute a plan, but to put a plan that has been well thought through and that is also informed by the analysis that we were doing. And I can talk of 4 broad areas that we prioritized.
Okay.
Firstly, in evaluating the impact, it involved the teams from our technology, the facilities management, our health services, the HR team, and the different business leaders as well. So working with the top leadership team, on the one hand, you want to guide them as the HR director, but you also want to keep them accountable because there are some critical decisions that have to be made by the business with the support of HR. And purely because this is about people first, one of the things that I was talking to the CEO about is it actually makes the CEO the chief empathy officer, like Mark Bussin says. It's not just HR that has to be empathetic. And the second priority we looked at was around constant communication. This crisis challenges the leadership in terms of being really authentic and being transparent, and not pretending like you have all the answers, but working with the employees, getting the communication around what is this COVID-19 all about, help the people understand what plans are we putting in place, what measures do they need to take as employees, but more so reassuring them that you are there to support them as a business, as leaders, and also to strengthen the trust that can only be stronger as and when the people see how you go about it, how you listen, how you are transparent in your communication. And the third area we looked at was around the employee experience, because this crisis sends shock down people's lives, and because the impact keeps multiplying. And the experience that Belelem spoke about when we lost our colleague, we had been implementing our plan for about 3 weeks. And at that time, one of the roles that I found myself having to play was to be the bridge between the employees, the leaders, but also the regulators as well. Because here you're not talking about the interest of an individual or a company, but you're also talking about the interest of the country and the citizens in the country. And the image and reputation, not just of the organization, but you think broadly of the country. How do we deal with it? What is it? What plans are in place to manage the situation? Will assure the people internally in the organization. And we found that our employees were not surprised, because they had seen the ongoing communications and the plans that were in place. There was a state where we share the dashboards with them on a weekly basis. And by the time the media got the information that we have lost a colleague, our employees already had the information. In fact, they got it through one of the employees, but it was okay, because we knew there was engagement of the employees, there was transparency, and we had to work with the regulators, make sure that at the state where the relevant department has done the communication based on the directive as an organization we can follow. But that for me is an experience that says, as the HR director, you need to be calm. Don't rush to feel the noise, but also don't be too slow, and don't do it alone, because we had to work from HR with the leaders in marketing, in brand, in the business, the leaders in the business, supporting the family, supporting the employees. And remember, just having one employee who passes, it actually shocks the whole system. But I'm comfortable that with the focus on employee experience, we were able to really continue to keep our people engaged. And the fourth thing that we needed to do was, if we implement the plan that we have in place, we need to look in the medium and to the long term. It's very clear, because of the economic impact, that this pandemic will have an impact on jobs. Some of our salespeople already would not be able to reach the revenue targets, and then it has an impact on how they are rewarded, but also it has an impact on our policies. How do we deal with leave, and how do we deal with employee assistance, ensuring that employee wellness is heightened to strengthen and encourage the resilience in our employees. But then with managing our costs, it's not just about cost cutting. It's about making sure that we invest in the right things that are going to help us strengthen the resilience and be able to come out of this crisis as a winner. It was very interesting when we looked at implementation of the plan. We looked at 3 phases: the immediate, which is where we have to respond without panic. And then it was the a second phase where we are now in lockdown, but we are already way ahead with our plans, preparing for post-lockdown, but also for the recovery and the sustainability of the business. I think if one looks at how the world of work has changed, we've all been talking about the future of work, but if one looks at the future of work, the future is now. One thing that COVID-19 has done is it has accelerated the inevitable. The only thing is the unpleasant impact that it has on business and on human lives. But the changes that we have put in place, like working virtually, increasing it and enabling our people with the tools and the technology to be able to work from anywhere, but also supporting them with enablement of leaders on how to manage and lead virtual teams, and also how our employees can also be able to deal with working virtually as well. Those things are not going to go away. And we also had to play a lead as the executive, because if you're implementing social distancing, it's not just for the employees. The leaders have to walk the talk, because the leaders can also have COVID-19. The leaders can also spread it. And that's where you see the power of vulnerability coming in from a leader perspective. The health and the well-being of the employees. If one looks at the impact of the technology, impact of working virtually, impact on the health, and also the fact that our employees are not islands. They have families that they are concerned about. They have colleagues, they have friends. They are concerned about their health. All of those things, they compound the stress, they make people more anxious, and we had to look at how do we ramp up our employee well-being offering, virtually things like e-learning programs, but also creating the awareness around the use of things like mindfulness, encourage people to take regular breaks, because all we know is working from home, in most cases, you put in a lot more time than you would. You save on the travel, but then you are more productive. And it's very easy also to get burnout working from home.
Okay, Jeanett, thank you very much. It's a mouthful, and it is clear that you as an HR professional, and I think your colleagues across the world, so to speak, will have your work cut out in the years, in the months to come. I mean, to provide direction, to comfort people, and as Mark said also in his presentation, to make empathy part of the business's purpose. Otherwise, we're not going to get our people engaged. It will not lift the uncertainty and anxiety. I'm going to move on. Thank you very much. I think there's quite a few questions, but we will handle that after Siphiwe has spoken. Sorry, I dropped my notes here. So, Siphiwe, are you there, my friend?
I am here, definitely.
Okay. So if I can just say one or two things about Siphiwe. He holds a master's in, he's got an MBA. He has got an BCom and various other qualifications. At the moment, he's busy with his PhD. I suppose, Siphiwe, you virtually finished it over this lockdown period now.
Not a chance. Unfortunately not.
Siphiwe was previously... Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry. Siphiwe was previously, amongst others, head of L&D at Nedbank. He is a seasoned HR person. He's being a past president and, well, let's rather call it past chairman of the South African Board for Personal Practice. And he was the past chapter president of the Professional Speakers Association of South Africa. He has been regarded as one of the top professional speakers in the country. He lectures at various universities, business schools like Gibbs and Henley, for example. He is also the author of Stagnation Must Fall, 100 Practical Lessons that will activate your career progression. I can highly recommend the book, and let me explain my vested interest there. We published the book. So from that point of view, it's highly recommended. Siphiwe is going to talk to us about hope, and is there still hope, and how do we forge ahead in tough, turbulent times in our country? So over to you, Siphiwe. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Wilhelm, and a very good morning to all our colleagues. I also see some familiar faces like Mark. So great to see all of you. So I just wanted to share some thoughts around the topic that we've entitled "Forging Ahead in Tough Times" very, very quickly. There's pessimism in the air right now. There's just no doubt about it. All of us are in this thing together. It's very, very hard to be an optimist right now, because, you know, your employees are feeling anxious about their health, their finances, their jobs. People are really, really battling. We're experiencing two types of anxiety. So people are facing anxiety with regards to loss of income, loss of normalcy, loss of community, but we're also having anticipatory anxiety. Will I actually have a job again? Will I have a business again? And so on. So people are really, really battling right now. And crises really take a toll on all of us. They're quite exhausting, as you all may know. And our employees' capacity to respond, it's a difficult thing. So I teach a subject called organizational behavior. And so we study how human beings respond to pressure and so on in organizations. And you can see that people's response to this exponential change shrinks, because this change is no longer incremental. It is rather radical by nature. So it really is tough times. So as leaders, as HR leaders, we need to lead with a human focus. And whenever I say this, leaders always talk to me and say, no, but Siphiwe, we still have a business to run. So this can be very interesting and tough for leaders because you do still have a business to run. Is there anything we can do at all to help our teams? And I want to argue that, yes, there is something that we can do. And this is cultivating something that we call psychological capital, which I'm going to explain what it is now. But amazingly, the development of this thing called psychological capital in a human being is positively correlated to employee well-being, to thriving in tough times, to job performance, job satisfaction, and even life satisfaction. So if you can help our employees to cultivate psychological capital in these tough times, we'll give them a little bit of hope to survive and even possibly thrive in these tough times. And I want to give you a quick story and share a little bit about that. Many of us might not know this, those who didn't study psychology, but up until 1998, the study of psychology had always concerned itself with what we call pathology. It was about fixing what is wrong with human beings. It's almost like psychologists would wait for you to have anxiety or depression, and then after that you will go to them, they will try and fix this anxiety or depression. Up until 1998, the incoming president of the Psychological Association of America, Martin Seligman, proposed that surely if we could study what is wrong with human beings, maybe we could also study what is right with human beings and teach people how to flourish, how to thrive. And out of that, there was born a new field of study called positive psychology, and which the presentation is based on. And under that, positive organizational behavior, which is what I teach, branched out of the field of positive psychology, which is around how do we help people in the workplace to cope with pressure, with anxiety, and how do we capacitate them in order for them to survive these tough times. And one of the biggest things about that was developing this thing called psychological capital that I've spoken about. Psychological capital is a construct that includes 4 constructs. But we know 2 things about psychological capital, colleagues. We know, one, we know that it is measurable. In other words, we know that you can have lower psych cap and higher psych cap. We know that it is measurable. It's not just motivation. You can actually measure it. Number 2, we also know that it is cultivatable. You can train people how to have a higher psychological capital. And it involves 4 constructs. I'm going to mention the 4. We'll cover only 1 today because of time, but it will help us in order to cultivate it when we go back to the workplace. So the 4 constructs of psychological capital is the construct of hope. Many people don't understand. They think hope is just a motivational mumbo-jumbo gimmick, but hope is actually a psychological construct. And in fact, Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and he talks about it in the book that one of the things he observed when he was trapped in concentration camps was that once someone loses hope, you can just see them that they will never survive the next 2 or 3 days, and in fact, they would die. So hope is a very powerful construct. The second one is resilience. So resilience, the ability to bounce back in tough times, is such a powerful one. In fact, studies after studies have shown us that the ability to bounce back in tough times is an even better predictor of success than education and training. If you just refuse to stay down after adversities, you can survive. You can thrive more than anybody with education, in fact. The third one is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, how you view yourself, your belief in yourself. People who believe in themselves a little bit more are able to bounce back in tough times. And lastly, it's optimism. And many people also don't know what optimism is all about, but it's about how you view and respond to negative events. So we're going to cover 1 today, a little bit more information, hope. What can we do as leaders to cultivate hope within our teams, to help people become hopeful in the midst of adversity? And hope, ladies and gentlemen, it's about how you can be able to teach yourself hope, we know that, but how you can see silver linings even when you are in tough times. And there's 3 things we can do as leaders to cultivate hope, and I want to share that and take it back to Wilhelm. The first thing that you can do as a leader to cultivate hope is break down complex and difficult goals into bite-sized portions. Many of us as leaders love talking in big numbers. So, and people get overwhelmed, especially in tough times, when you say things like, we need 1 billion rand to recover. It is overwhelming to people. It can make people very, very tired. So this is the time where as leaders, we need to tell stories. We need to paint great pictures of a future that people can see beyond this crisis. We need a picture. We need a mental picture of a preferred future, not a graph, not a spreadsheet, you know. There's a very good reason why Martin Luther King didn't say, I have a spreadsheet, because there is absolutely nothing inspirational about spreadsheets. We need to paint pictures. We need to inspire people by telling them dreams. The second thing we can do to cultivate hope in tough times is to celebrate small milestones. People are tired. So when they achieve small milestones, let us encourage them, let us reward them for it so that they're encouraged to go more and more. Especially in tough times, we know that as leaders, in tough times, we must communicate more, not less. So it is tempting for us as HR to be aloof, but that's not going to help us at all. We need to get closer and talk and be very closer to employees. But as we get closer, we need to tell them to face reality. We don't have to lie about reality. That's why it's tough for us as HR, because one of the things we have to do is to communicate facts, but with a positive spirit. And we have to have that balance right. And lastly, one of the things that we can teach people is to think about pathways and removing obstacles as leaders. One of our roles is to remove obstacles, but teach people how to think in pathways. Hope is about finding multiple pathways to one goal. So if someone comes to us and say, I couldn't do this one thing, instead of accepting that, you teach them multiple pathways. You ask them powerful questions. That's why coaching is an important thing. We must ask more and tell less in tough times. When you ask them questions, it triggers them to think, and hopefully it can generate a little bit of hope. So there's a few things we can do to cultivate, but the most important thing for us is to model good behavior and tell people this too shall pass. This is not the end. And the best thing you can do to teach people to be hopeful and resilient sometimes is to remind them of how resilient they've been in the past. Some of us, we might not have seen the movie of COVID-19, but we've seen the 2008. I nearly said we also saw the 1928 depression, but if you saw that, you shouldn't be on this call. But there are other crises that we've seen before, and we've come through them. Sometimes you have to look back and say, if I could survive that, I could survive this. And when you remind people of how they've overcome in the past, it also helps them to be hopeful that this too shall pass. So if you do these few things, you can be able to cultivate hope, and hopefully those other three constructs that I haven't shared. Thank you so much, Wilhelm.
Thank you, Siphiwe. That was really profound. Thank you very much. Guys, we're going to take questions now. We can, I suggest you use your chat room. If Debbie, can you just explain? I think there might be people who don't know how to operate the chat room or access it. Can you quickly just tell the people where to get hold of it and so on, and then we take it from there?
At the bottom of your screen, you should see a bar that says Manage Participants, Chat. You click on the chat button and it will pop open a box on the right, and then you can just select where you would like to, if you would like to send the message to everybody or to a specific person, but obviously now you would click everybody. You can just pop your questions there.
Okay, thank you. If you use an iPad, I'm using an iPad, then it's on your top right-hand corner of your screen. So just one or two observations quickly that from my side now. I just want to get into my chat room, by the way. There we are. So I don't see any questions at this stage, but anyway, in any case, you're welcome to provide your comments as well. The one thing about hope, I mean, they say there's where there's hope, there's life, but you can turn it around and say where there's life, there's hope. I've read a book now recently about, and it's about this Marcus Aurelius' statement about the obstacle is the way. And you can just think about the obstacle is the way. So in this article, they make the point that many organizations, household names that we have today, like General Motors, for instance, was established during the time of the Great Depression, or the Great Depression of the 1867 period. And many of them household organizations today, and the guys have just not ignored, but they forced ahead despite the terrible economic conditions during that period of time. The other thing in terms of SICAP that I just want to make a point quickly is the importance of gratitude. Keep perspective every day. And there's still a lot of things that you can say thank you for. There's still many people that are in worse positions than what we are in. So bear that in mind as well. I just want to find out quickly, they say, and I'm going to pose this now to the three panelists, this question. After every single major catastrophe, whether it's an epidemic or a pandemic or a depression, after every one of them, there were great societal changes. The only exception was 1918's Spanish flu, because that was during the First World War, and it was actually the First World War that shaped many other things, like giving women the universal franchise and so on. What do you think is going to be the impact on society in terms of maybe changes in values, whatever, after we've gone through this? Anyone can shoot. Mark, do you want to quickly?
Thank you, Wilhelm. Yes, let me come in. I think that a lot is going to change. The first one is that we will respect our health a lot more. And I see a lot of people becoming a lot more healthy and doing stuff at home to look after themselves. Two, I think our family and friend relationships are going to change for the better, and we'll be a lot more tolerant, patient, kind, and respectful towards each other. Three, I think the whole concept of traveling all the time to meet anyone and everyone that you feel you need to sit across the table, this has broken that cycle. And I'm much more comfortable now on a screen. For me, this is perfect. I would have had to get in my car and go and drive somewhere, sit in the traffic, maybe go through a police roadblock or two. People have finally got used to the new normal. And as it happens, I chair the board of one of the biggest private schools in Sandton. And we're offering the kids the option of coming back to school or not. And many are just saying, you know, they prefer to stay at home. They prefer the home environment. And I think work is going to change like that too, where we're not going to be so determined to have people sitting on a chair anymore. A lot of organizations were virtual, but now more and more are going to go virtual, and it's actually okay. The impact on HR is a profoundly different way of doing performance management, where we will now move towards managing outcomes and not inputs, and massive changes to the way we pay and remunerate people, massive changes to the way we recruit. And before we had to sit in front of someone while recruiting them, now it's okay to have a bot recruit you because you're much more familiar with talking to someone on screen. So massive societal change, Wilhelm, in my view. And for me personally, mostly positive, because my favorite dance partner has always been ambiguity and chaos, and I'm enjoying it.
Good. Jeanette, your side, what do you think?
I think in the past few years, we saw the rise of the organization as a social enterprise, but I think this crisis has already started mobilizing not just the people who have the funding, but people who want to connect and want to make a difference. And one of the things that we're already seeing, which I believe will continue, is that the sense of community is increasing a lot, and people are caring more about their friends, colleagues, loved ones, but also, even if we are going virtual, the need for connection is even heightened, which means that we will continue with these technology capabilities to help us to do that. But one of the things that I believe is going to grow, which we have seen, even starting with our very own employees, was when people were coming up on a voluntary basis, wanting to be part of the CSI initiatives that we are doing as an organization to support people that are in greater need. Not that they are not in need, but when you have that, you know that people are beginning to think a lot more about themselves, and they know they are there for a greater cause. I think the other thing, in addition to what Mark has raised, is this is going to also come up with opportunities for different businesses. I think with the message of hope that Siphiwe spoke about, the businesses will be impacted, but new businesses will also emerge. We just need to think differently. And I think we are going to see people coming up with ideas. In fact, there's people who are already leveraging on some of the needs that are required to manage COVID-19 to start their own businesses. It's also going to encourage that rise of the 4-hour work week, where you can work for different organizations, doing different kind of services, working from anywhere. And I think HR has never been as critical as now, starting from how we develop people, how we remunerate them, how we connect and engage with them, and how flexible we are with our benefits, our opportunities for people to progress, with the understanding that there's a talent economy that is so open that if you don't do the right things and connect with the people in such a way that it brings value to them, then you are not going to keep them in the business.
Thank you very much. Any something you want to add, Siphiwe?
I think for me, I agree with Jeanett and Mark. The only thing I am hoping, and I think I'm anticipating, is that when the lockdown ends and we have a gradual move back into the workplace, many of us are just going to be wanting to see proper human beings for a while. I just need a hug, Tina. So I think for a while, we probably going to have that moment, but it will normalize and we'll go back to working back again virtually. We will never go back to the old way we've been doing things, but we'll have this spike of having events and so on for a while and just seeing each other, which is also very important, by the way. So I think that's what will happen. But for those of us in L&D, there's a lot of things that we've been talking about just-in-time training, about push versus pull. We're going to have to speed those things up, because immediately after this, self-directed learning and all of those things will have to be there after this lockdown.
Okay, thank you. There's an important, thanks, Siphiwe. There's an important question that I just want to read to you guys. This is from Tembi Mkhizi. There are work environments where it is not practical to opt to work from home. Now, that's very important. I would like to think that anxieties about infection are even higher. Over and above what has been said, is there more that HR or leaders can do for these particular environments? Yes, Mark.
So thank you for that question. It's great. Let's come back to the school where you've got kids in a class, and normally they're about 25 if you're lucky, and plus 40 if not. Denmark has started doing things like having 2 shifts in school, so 10 or 12 people per classroom in the one shift that is spaced by 1.5 meters. And then in the afternoon, similar things, and hand washing every hour. So I think where you do have to go to work, like factory workers here have to go to work to produce, they're going to practice social distancing and practice hand washing, rigorous hand washing. Of course, the masks, gloves, and clothing goes without saying at the moment, but our behaviors are going to change, and that's another big social change, the behaviors. I don't know how the Italians who love hugging are going to change their hugging and kissing, because you kiss 3 times there, and I think it's 4 or 5 times in France, or is it the other way around? But this elbow greet and less hugging will also be a social change.
Okay, thank you. Jeanett, any comment from you?
I think some of the things that we had to do was, instead of just focusing on the employee themselves, you realize that for them, while they are working at home, they would need to have the stress around their children, for example, taken care of. Because if their children are not progressing with their studies, and if their children are not well engaged, then the people will not be focused working from home. And one of the things that we have done was to extend a program that we have to bring in virtual studies to supplement the educational programs that the children in primary, high school have. And that helps the parents to be able to focus on their work at the time when they need to, but also the enhancement of employee wellness in terms of encouraging people to also spend time with family, with things like exercising from home and so on, and giving them access to such facilities and coaching virtually as well. It's some of the things that we have been implementing, but we've also had people that have come forward to say the economy is highly impacted, I'm closer to retirement, and my benefits are highly impacted. So what do we do as an organization? And one of the things that we have not implemented it yet, but it's ready, it's done, because we have to look ahead, is to look at how can we extend the retirement age for the person without them having to take the retirement benefits, but do everything in such a way that you are tax compliant and you give them time to just ride the wave. And also things like medical aid, for instance, we've had to look at how we can make sure that we cater for the employees who are not able to meet their financial objectives, especially people that are in sales. What we also did, like now in the lockdown, we've had people who cannot work from home, not because they don't have laptops and so on, but because their work can be done from home. And we looked at the duration. We said, with the empathy in mind, we are going to let the people stay home, focus on family, strengthen family, but we are not going to reduce their leave credits. And we are tracking it. We're tracking what the financial implication is, so that we know and we understand as a business. And we communicated it to the employees, who others can work from home and they are working more than the number of hours they can work. But with the transparency, we don't have a problem of people who are saying, but so-and-so is getting support because they can't work and they are at home, and then I'm going to work extra hours. It's about transparency. It's about helping the people to understand that you need to deal with it in different ways. And as a result, the customization of the support that we provide will differ from one target population to the other.
Well, that's a new challenge. So we talk about customization for customers, but now we need to apply that to wider than normal, the remuneration side as well for our employees. I've got a couple of questions here. The one was the for Mark, whether he's got a sense of how many people, how many organizations have already implemented a salary reduction plan, and how do you get it navigated that through a highly unionized environment. That's the one. The other one was a sort of a comment also, question about whether one should take more quick employee surveys, the sort of a dipstick, take a dipstick of how employees are experiencing the new way of new situation at the moment. We had the school story. Yeah, this is quite interesting, important, with schools possibly returning last. Parents without help or finances to pay extra for help is going to be more complicated when they have to return to work. Yeah, and then that's the service. Anyone, Mark, quickly on maybe the dipstick and the how many companies already?
Yes, thank you, Wilhelm, and thanks for the questions. Mertz, the dipstick, most organizations have started the dipstick to get a sense of where their employees are, so I would support that idea. The second question from Miriam is a great one. We do surveys. A lot of the organizations here, like SARA and the consultancies, are doing surveys. We think it's close to 50%. Nearly half the organizations have implemented salary reductions, and I think it's going to move up to about 75%. And in the USA, it's over 50% already. So I sit on a board there called World at Work, and it's way over 50% in the USA. And the last question from Tracy, it's a real challenge because Google Classroom for young ones, I've got a 7-year-old, they can't do it on their own. So it's fine for the high school, but for the primary schools, you need the parent there to sit and help the child. The grade 1s and grade 2s can't read yet, and they can't get onto all these platforms on their own. So you either have to hire an au pair if both parents are working, and if not, I know I was at home, and the homework for a grade 2, he's in grade 2, my 7-year-old, took me 5 hours to do with him, and that's things like mathletics and reading eggs and the typing skills and puzzles that he had to do. So the parents are really, really, really struggling from a time point of view because they go to work, come home, and perhaps the house helper was unable to help the child, and they have to start with a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old at 5 or 6 p.m. With homework, which can take 4 or 5 hours. It really, really is a massive challenge. So school fees and paying school fees is quite a good indicator, because at the school that we have, we've got doctors, lawyers, pilots, restaurant owners, and I would say up to a third of parents have approached the school to say that they're unable to pay school fees because one or the other has either had a pay cut or been retrenched. SA Express pilots, there are a couple at the school, weren't paid a salary in March at all. So probably not in April or May. And what do you do? So in schools, particularly the private schools, it's going to be quite difficult for the schools to cut costs, because 75% of the school's cost is salaries and wages. And that other 30 or 25% that remains, to eke 20%, for example, out of 30%, you're only dealing with 1 or 2 million rand savings, and the schools are unable to reduce their fees. What they're trying to do, I think, is keep a similar service going on exactly the school terms and keeping the fees up. And those parents that cannot pay are being asked to go to the bursar in business language. That's the finance director or CFO. The bursar, and sit with them, and they're going to have to demonstrate that they cannot pay. So they have to pass what's called a means test. And if they're unable to pay their fees and they get through the means test, the schools will have to make a plan somehow. As long as it's 10, 20% of parents, the schools will be fine, as will the universities. But once you pass 10, 20%, it's finished. The school either has to close down or do something absolutely drastic. And I can't even contemplate what that might be. Thanks for the questions. Great questions.
Yeah, Mark, your 50% and more, I saw this morning in that proposal to the president, or at the presidency for the phasing in of the lockdown or phasing out of the lockdown. There they estimate also in that report over 50% have already, and they expect up to 80% will. Well, maybe it's your figures that you provided to them. I wouldn't know. But in any case, I think, guys, let me just check quickly for other questions here that we might have had. Siphiwe, this is for you. Will this new situation force educational institutions to amend the structure of degrees and diplomas? And if so, what need to be added, especially business administration? And the question is about management qualifications. Can you quickly respond to that, Siphiwe?
It has already happened. So all of our programs at business schools have changed. Obviously now we've moved 100% online. The idea is that post this, there's a percentage that will move online, but the curriculum will still, structure will still be classroom based. So I think going forward, probably 2021 will have a bit of an hybrid, but the idea right now is that 2022, if things kind of normalize, we will probably go back to the classroom, particularly because of the issue of data, the issue of fiber in our country is not as reliable as it is. We've had to give people data like 30 gigabytes of data, which obviously can't be sustainable. So if that can be sorted, we'll probably move even more online. But if data and bandwidth and so on is not sorted, probably in 2022, that's the thinking, we'll probably go back to normal classroom.
Okay. Guys, I see we're running out of time. I'm going to ask Jeanett, do you have a few last comments you want to make? And I specifically want to pose a question to you in that regard. Have you guys given some thought about the new skills that will be required for this new world of work? In other words, are we looking at more at self-starters, people who can work independently? Mark made the point about the importance of performance appraisals that will change radically for many organizations where it will be much more outcomes based. Have you guys given some thought on that already? And then you can close off with 1 or 2 sentences.
Yes, we have given a thought of that, Mark. Velelem, but remember, this is accelerating the work that has been in progress around the future of work. So it's not the beginning, but what it does is it has accelerated building capability within the organization so that people can be able to work from anywhere, and the investments on digital capability needs to be accelerated, and some of them even brought forward in order to have the benefits at a later stage. But yes, the skills that are required to be able to work in such an environment, we have identified them, but it has been a journey. We are not at a stage where I can say we are completely there. We also have been on a journey of business and HR digital transformation on the business intelligence, but also, although we have been using HR technology, we're now on the HR cloud, and that was all clearly around enabling people to be able to work from where they are. Performance, again, we moved to performance and goals approach, which actually enables ongoing performance engagement, coaching, and feedback on the technology, which is not like quarterly or monthly, it's much more frequent. And technology around employee engagement to help people in the very small communities that they are working in, whether they are studying a program together, they could be a community that can work together on GEM, for example, as one of those solutions. And someone also mentioned the employee surveys. The employee surveys are critical now to help us understand the people's experiences from working virtually and what needs they have, support, do they have adequate support, and helping them with managing the anxiety, but that's going to continue. because how we work now, the bulk of it will still be in place. I also saw a question there around the impact of social distancing. And I want to raise one which is not usually from an HR perspective, but one of the things that organizations will end up having to look at is facilities, the workspace, because instead of cutting jobs, you would rather reduce the office buildings that you have. If some of the people can work virtually and you focus on the outcome, they are productive, then you're actually going to redirect your investments to other areas that can help the people to thrive and cope, and the business to also be sustainable.
Yeah, that's
I think most of the changes that have happened now, they are going to stay. It's just that when we go back, they will reduce a bit in phases, but I don't see the changes going away because they were meant to happen. They were just going to happen a little bit later. Yes. It's the difficult side of the impact on humanity that we need to address with the economy that hopefully will recover.
Yeah, I think you're very right there. There's this notion that in a crisis situation, many of the plans that you have on paper for the long-term future are being fast forwarded to this very moment, and we're seeing that definitely in the world of work and how we do business. Siphiwe, a last word from you?
I'm fine, Willem. I'm good.
Are you fine?
Yeah.
But stay fine then, please. Siphiwe and Mark and Jeanett, thank you very much. We really appreciated your input. It was quite profound, and in the end, it gave us a message of hope, and also for the participants. And I want to leave you with one thought. Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great. Now he's got a massive research team there in Boulder, Colorado, and after the 2008 crash, the Harvard Business Review asked him to write an article about change and volatility and so on. So what he did, he asked his team to analyze the last 1,000 years, the type of changes that took place and so on. And they came to the one conclusion, and the shocks on the society, so to speak. And he came to one conclusion, that this team, that during the period since the Second World War and late 2007's property crash and then the financial crash, was the most stable period that the world experienced in 1,000 years. That whatever changed, like the Vietnam War, Korean War, and so on, were small blips, actually. And that the point that he makes is that we will return back to, so that was a very an abnormal time period. And we will return back to normality. That was his point. And we are experiencing that now. We're seeing that with, we saw that with the crash. We saw it now with this pandemic. We saw with extraordinary, strange leadership from many of the countries as presidents and so on. Don't want to mention names. So we must really, the point is that we should be ready and make ourselves ready for far more changes and radically changes than we've experienced before. And that is really where we want to play a role when it comes to the HR communities, to guide people, to give them to an extent an anchor, a place where they can go and where they can source decent content, and where we can create a forum and forums to discuss stuff like we did this morning, which I found quite useful. Thank you very much to everybody. Debbie, thanks for organizing it, to you and Buzi, and to all the other chaos staff that's involved. Guys, take care, stay safe, be healthy. We'll be in touch with you again. Thank you.